no better people can express the amount of tolerance, peace, and peace building than the two people I'll be quoting. First, the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, may his soul rest in peace, said, "Treat every person, no matter his creed, race, as a special soul. It is the mark of Islam." His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, may God protect him, said that policies shaped by deep thought, wisdom, fairness, and understanding, policies that encourage peace and dialogue, not capitulation. These are the guiding principles that characterize the policies of the GCC. These two leaders have always been have always influenced my decisions with their wisdom, their kindness, and their understanding of peace and tolerance have influenced me personally, and they are one of the main motivators towards these kind of workshops, the kind of work that we do in Dubai Police, and my personal motivator. So before we begin, this is a short description of the program. What we will be doing today, we'll be talking about tolerance, respect, and equality, and its importance, and the importance of ingraining these concepts in the member of the youth committee. Moreover, we'll be tackling negative stereotypes, prejudice, and xenophobia. The purpose of this workshop is that each and every one of you is a change maker, whether you know it or not. Each and every one of you will take this message of peace and they'll deliver it to their colleague, to their friend, to their family member. And I want you to carry this message of peace and to ingrain it into your personal decisions and into your future decisions, whether you're change makers, whether you are decision makers, or whether you are a good member of the community, because we're all good members of the community. The beginning of this journey was with my friends and my colleagues and my family of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. These beautiful faces were an inspiration, and I keep you all in my mind when I'm giving these workshops because of all the information that you've taught me, all the skills, and all the wisdom you've passed on. So these are the topics of the workshop. As I said, we'll be talking about tolerance. We'll be moving on to peace, violence concepts. How can we sustain peace? What is peace building? What is conflict? How can we analyze conflict? What is conflict transformation? And how can we manage conflict? Finally, when it comes to conflict, how can we resolve conflict? Then we'll be moving on to dialogue. And last and most importantly, we'll be talking about the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, which discusses youth. So without further ado, let's begin. So what exactly is tolerance? Simple dictionary, tolerance is peace. Tolerance is coexistence, it's humanity, and it's respect. Put all these elements together and you'll get tolerance. We've spoken about peace, which is the main concept or one of the main concepts of today. But what exactly is peace? According to Albert Einstein, peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice. Martin Luther King said that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence only. Mr. Han said, many people think that excitement is happiness, but when you are excited, you are not peaceful. You are not peaceful. True happiness is based on peace. So when there is peace, you get happiness. Albert said that until he extends the circle of his compassion to all living things, man will not himself find peace. And finally, Ralph Waldo said, peace cannot be achieved through violence. It can only be attained through understanding. So peace is not only one thing. Peace is a group of definitions. It has multiple definitions, and the concept of peace differs from one person to the other. It's justice, it's happiness, it's love, compassion, and understanding. But let's go to a more technical way. What is exactly peace? The United Network of Young Peace Builders said that there are two types of peace: negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace means that negative peace was first defined by the Roman Empire. And negative peace states that it is the situation or the condition when there is no war fought in the borders. So when we don't have any war, the Romans stated that this is the negative peace. Positive peace, on the other hand, means the absence of direct violence, but also cultural peace and violence, and how are they related. Negative peace is the absence of direct and physical violence, whereas positive peace is the absence of the structural violence, the deep-rooted understanding of prejudice and of discrimination, of hate. This is positive peace. If we can live together in harmony, in equality, we achieve positive peace. Structural violence, I'll give you the definitions of these, are examples of structural violence is poverty, hunger, gender inequality. Sociocultural violence is racism, sexism, religious intolerance, discrimination. Ecological violence, it is pollution, pollution of the environment. These concepts lead you from as you can see, from the top to the bottom, how you can reach from positive peace, from the most peaceful situation to the state of violence, how peace can escalate, or how peace can shift from what is good to what is destructive. So what is violence? According to the World Health Organization, violence is the intentional use of force, power, threatened or actually against oneself or another person. Violence revolves around the use of physical force, and there are different types of violence. There are self-directed violence, collective, and interpersonal. Self-directed is when you are directing this violence, this anger, this hate towards yourself. The perpetrator and the victim are the individual. The person who is causing the violence and the victim of this violence, it is the same person. You are, or the person themselves are subjecting themselves to this violence. And the other type of violence is collective violence. It refers to violence committed by large groups, individuals. It could be due to social, political, and economical differences. So because of social, political, and economical differences, we can get violence. It could be hate crime. It could be cutting of wages towards a specific group of people, discriminating between one group to the other, and not giving everybody equal rights. So interpersonal violence is the last type of violence WHO recognizes. Interpersonal violence refers to violence between individuals. It could be family members, close friends, it could be strangers or the community. So there's actually a diagram that defines it, as you can see. It's divided into family or partner and community. It could be child violence, partner violence, elder violence, acquaintance, stranger, and there are different levels of violence in this scheme that is used by the WHO. Another definition by the UNOY is the deprivation is when you deprive a group of people of their basic human rights. This is considered violence. For example, me, Mariam, I'm not receiving my right to education. This is considered violence. Or I'm not receiving my right to shelter, to health. This is considered violence by the United Nations of Young Peacebuilders. The United Nations of Young Peacebuilders also recognizes that there are two types of violence: the visible violence and the invisible violence. Visible violence is something that is physical and that you can see happening. It could be killing, it could be domestic violence, torture, it could be abuse, etc. It is something that you can see with your own eyes. Invisible violence, on the other hand, is as equally severe, because invisible violence is something that you do not notice or you do not see. Not many people may recognize. Direct violence is much more visible, and it can be identified quickly or better considering with respect to invisible violence. Invisible violence could be cultural and structural. Structural meaning that unequal treatment, oppression, discrimination that is built within societies or organizations. Cultural violence, on the other hand, it talks about discrimination based on culture and the using of the symbolic use of culture as a weapon towards others. So let's say I would subject someone else to violence because I would think of myself as a better person than them. For let's say because I hold a better degree than person X, and this is considered structural violence. So before I actually play this video, I would like to do a poll if possible, and yeah, it's regarding domestic violence. I'd just like your opinion on the matter. If you can vote, there will be a pop-up screen, and then we'll proceed to the video. Please vote according to your opinion. Don't feel like you are pressured into voting in a specific way. What do you think? What do you perceive? I'll just give you a minute to finish. So actually, the poll will close automatically in a minute and a half. So please select your interaction with help us or help me send a message in a much more efficient way. Okay, I'll be closing the poll. Sorry, the audio is not working. Let me. One second. Sorry, just 1 second because the audio is not working. Okay.
Who's that?
No one.
Give it here. Let me see. You are not going out with them. Okay?
No, look, come on. Look, I'll just go out for a bit.
I'm always going out every month.
No, I'm not.
You are.
A couple of times. So look.
Why are you coming close? Why are you coming close to me like that?
My phone, but look.
Why are you raising your hand towards me like that?
I'm raising my
What's your
hand.
problem?
So I'm sorry, the audio is not working, unfortunately. But I'll play it at the end. So you don't miss the video. It's actually a very interesting video. I still want to play it, but I'll play it at the end. So I'll share with you the poll answers. Don't worry, no names are shown. I just want to share the numbers. And as you can see, the numbers that are visible, 84% of you said that females are more likely to be a victim of physical violence by an intimate partner, and 58% of you said that females are more likely to be a victim of psychological aggression by an intimate partner. So there was actually a study conducted in the US, and there are numbers that are relevant to the poll that we just conducted, and I'll show you these numbers now. So let's see. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men, meaning 24.3% and 13.8%, aged 18 and older in the US, have been a victim of severe physical violence. Nearly half of all men and women in the United States have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime, 48.4% and 48.8%. So the majority thought that women are more likely to be subjected to violence, where in reality, and unfortunately, both men and women are equally subjected to violence. These numbers are actually very alarming, because the way that violence behaves and the way that violence is that it starts from nowhere, out of nowhere. The signs are not always clear to us, but we need to take care and we need to prioritize ourselves in these cases, and we need to look for help, ask for help whenever we are subjected or we feel like we are subjected to violence. Please reach out to those who can help you. Please do speak up. It would save lives. So the poll that we did suggested that the majority think that women, but I just wanted to point out that men are equally subjected or are equally susceptible or subjected to violence. So please do think of when you are raising awareness, please do not forget our brothers that are suffering from violence, and let's stand equally with both women and men that have been mistreated and have been treated violently. Another study by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence stated that 40% of female murder victims are killed by their intimate partner, and 5% of male murdered victims are killed by their intimate partner. These numbers state that these people are close to you, and these people are people you trust. So the escalation from peace to conflict to violence is alarming, and it can lead to severe and permanent damage, unfortunately. So please just raise awareness when it comes to violence and combating violence. Moving on to sustainability, hopefully a more lighter topic, but still as equally important, and to the concept of sustaining peace. What exactly is sustaining peace? Sustaining peace talks about prevention of outbreak, escalation, continuation, and reoccurrence of conflict. Sustaining peace tackles the concepts of conflict and finds a solution for them. And these solutions are not short-term solutions. Sustaining peace talks about the long term of finding solutions, finding preventive measures, finding ways that would avoid the escalation of conflict, containing the situation, etc. Sustaining peace addresses the root causes of the conflict and the issue behind violence. So in most situations, what would happen is that when we are addressing a conflict or an issue, we are not looking at the root causes. We are only treating the symptoms, but not the actual virus or the actual core reason behind it, as they say in medical terms. So sustaining peace tackles the root causes. So I'll give you a scenario. Person X and person Y are from two different nationalities. Person X argues with person Y on a daily basis. They would comment on the way they dress. They would comment on the way they talk, the way they express themselves. And person Y does not know what exactly is going on. This can cause anger in the future, and this conflict may result in violence, may result in an escalation, unbelievable escalation. But when you implement the sustaining peace concept, what happens is that you look at the reasons behind these differences behind these concepts. I'll give you a quote by the UN Secretary General Antonio. He said that preventing conflicts and addressing the root causes is what we must work on for peace continuum. Peace continuum meaning to sustain peace, and that will help us not only find solutions, but prevent these issues from happening again, set strategic approaches to these issues, and finally, supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically peace, justice, and strong institutions, sustainable goal number 16. So we talked about peace, violence, we talked about sustaining peace, but what exactly is peace building, which is the core of this workshop today? I have a small question, and I will answer. I'd like you to answer it while I am discussing the topic of peace building. So, peace building by the Alliance for Peace Building is defined as the management, mitigation, and resolution and transfer of conflict. We are managing conflict, we're mitigating it, we're resolving it, and we're transforming it. Conflict can be the conflict is a concept, and it, like any other concept, can be approached differently. We can take violence and approach it as a problem to solve, or we can look at violence as these are symptoms, and we need to find out what is causing it. We can look at conflict, and we can these are symptoms, and we can see what is causing it. How can we change this conflict, this disagreement, from something that is negative to something that is positive? How can we use this conflict to improve our community, to bring people together? So we'll find out. Peace building addresses the root causes of violence, as I've mentioned before. Peace building and sustaining peace rely on the same concept. Peace building also helps create structures and institutions that provide platforms for nonviolent resolution of conflict. Peace building is something that is not only institutional. It is something that that you use on your day-to-day life. It is something that you implement when you are making decisions that can affect others and the peace of others, and they can affect the situation of others. And these tools, these peace-building tools, are important and crucial. Peace-building seek to change beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. The goal of peace-building is not only finding solutions; it's reaching a point where we all agree and we're all happy, and we are all there to support each other. Peace-building does not aim to only force you to do something the way people do not force you to do something the way they want to. No, they help you understand why a certain concept is better, why we should not engage in violence, why we should take the more peaceful approach, why we should resolve conflict and reach a point where all parties are satisfied and all parties are given their rights. Peace building aims for coexistence. In our communities, we all come from diverse communities, especially the United Arab Emirates and the Emirates of Dubai, where we in the UAE consist of more than 200 nationalities. You can imagine the amount of diversity that is available in the United Arab Emirates. And we need to live together and live together in harmony. We need to coexist. We need to respect each other. We need to understand each other's points of views and our perspectives. And we need to work together towards bettering the community and finding solutions that would suit all individuals. So, going back to the poll that we just did, is peace building skills applicable in all fields other than safety and security? Yes, it is. And as you've all voted, peace building is involved in many, many fields in women, youth, academia, security, science and technology, law, environment, the development, food security, genocide prevention, health, human rights. Peace building can be ingrained in all these concepts and in all these fields. Everybody can be a peace builder, and everybody is a peace builder if they put an effort towards finding more peaceful solutions and the bettering of the community, towards thinking of your neighbor, your brother and your sister, towards improving each other's situation in any way that can be, in any way possible, towards helping each other. So we'll move on to the next point. Another definition for peace building is by the United Nations peacekeeping. Peace building measures the core issues and the effects of functioning society. It seeks to enhance the capacity of the state functionally and carry out its core function. Peace building wants the aim of peace building on a societal level is to ensure that we as a community, we are working together and we are functioning in the best and the most efficient way possible. Our differences are what bring us together, and our differences are what makes us better. I'm coming from the UAE and I bring my knowledge and my cultural understanding, and person X is coming from a different country and they're bringing their knowledge and their cultural beliefs and their cultural understanding. And together we can compare and we can benchmark and find something that suits us both and that would contribute to the better good. Peace building aims to reduce the risk of lapsing and relapsing into conflict by strengthening national capacities at all levels for conflict management, which we'll be discussing throughout the workshop, and it creates necessary conditions for sustainable peace. Peace building provides you the platform and the ability and the tools to ensure the sustainability of peace. So we spoke about peace, violence, sustaining peace, and peace building. To put it shortly, peace is what we want to achieve. Peace building is the tool that we use to achieve peace, and what we want in the end is not only peace for short term, but what we want to do is sustain this peace. We want to ensure that this peace is going to be continuous and it's going to include everybody. It's inclusive, and it's going to it's going to be for all times and all situations. So this is actually a picture I'm proud of as an Emirati, to see the UAE female peacekeepers, the first UAE female peacekeepers commanded by the United Nations. I wanted to share this in the middle, just a proud moment for us Emirati women. So let's go to the topic of conflict. How can we reach from peace to violence? It's usually the middle ground, which is conflict. Conflict by the Romans, or during the older times, and defined by in Latin, is to clash or engage in a fight, meaning that there is a confrontation from two or more parties due to incompatibility and competitiveness. On the other hand, peace today is defined as the struggle or contest between people with opposing needs, beliefs, values, and goals. Conflict can arise from the differences of beliefs, from the differences of ideas and opinions. We all feel very attached to our opinions and to our beliefs, and sometimes our same strong attachment and our refusal to understanding other people or under other perspectives can escalate and become a conflict, from a conflict to a violent situation. So, how is conflict created? Conflict is created because people have interests and they're capable of meeting or achieving or working towards their interests, and they will the will to define the situation of conflict. Meaning that I am interested in achieving, or I'm interested in providing food for only group A of people. This is my interest. Me, as Maryam, I feel and think that only group A are deserving of food, for example. And I'm a person who has the capabilities to make that happen. So I will make that happen. But Party B says, no, Maryam, you cannot do this. Maryam, you have to provide food and shelter for everybody. Group A is not any special than any other situation. And because of our difference in interest, my interest is for group A, whereas the other person's interest is for everybody. So we will have a conflict, and a conflict will arise, and we'll have a disagreement that can lead to a violent situation. If conflict is controlled or managed, it does not lead to violence. In fact, if conflict is managed very well, it could result into something that is productive. And it is not always the situation. Unfortunately, there are different ways to manage conflict, and they can give different results, and we'll be talking about them further. But there are certain people with the skills to make conflict or turn conflict from something that is negative into something that is positive. I would like to launch another poll if possible. So, what is the basics, or what can lead to conflict, and what are the classifications of conflict actually? Conflict can be between parties, it could be between two people, two groups, between the same group itself, between one culture, between or one society, between two cultures, between two countries, or within the country itself. It could be short term or long term. It could be micro or macro, something that we can see. The issue is there is no proper education. This is in society X, there's no proper education. And we know that this is the issue for the conflict. So this is a macro. Whereas micro could be something that is deep-rooted anger or deep-rooted discrimination. This is not something that we see, but it is something that we feel. It could be motivated by material, by culture, by social need. It could rapidly progress, or it could be something that would progress over a very long time, and you would not feel the changes. It could be constructive or destructive. Conflict can be constructive, and it's just the way that we manage it. It could be if it could use violence. It could be non-violent. It could be minor armed, major armed war, and it could be cultural, political, ideological, economic, or organizational. So all these classifications, all these terms classify what type of conflict do we have. Is it something that is within us? Is it something that is over long term? Something that we can see? Is it something due to culture? Is it something due to lack of materials? Is it something that is going out throughout? Is it something that is happening throughout a long time, etc.? So we'll move on to the ABC triangle. ABC triangle talks is a tool for conflict analysis, and it's actually a very interesting tool that is very helpful. But first, let's understand what conflict analysis is. It is the underlying of the root causes. How can we find out what are the root causes behind the conflict? And we have to determine the entry points. How can we approach this conflict? How can we find the solution? How can we solve this issue. So the ABC triangle consists of attitude, behavior, and contradiction. Behavior is something that is, and this is the latent level. So latent, this is the visible and non-visible level. Behavior is something that is observed and can be seen. The latent level or the latent level is something that is only theoretical and something that we sense, but it's not something that we see. Let's talk about each point separately. Attitudes, or attitude, it is your attitude towards the conflict. How am I approaching this conflict? It talks about my feelings, my thoughts, and my desires and my presumptions. I could be approaching a conflict with a completely different image than what's happening. And it could be something that is a misunderstanding, or just like I misheard the word, but khalas, for me, I thought of something and I want to cause an issue, or like I have an issue that I want to cause it, and I'm going to use whatever means possible. It is my attitude that defines what kind of conflict it is. Then there is the behavior. There is the it seems like some people are not able to join. So let me check the settings. If you would give me a minute, I apologize. Sorry, this will just take a second. So it seems that some participants are unable to join. I will be. So I'm not sure what exactly is the issue. I will be solving it throughout the session. So there's a question that is actually interesting. It says, does self-direct violence include mentally hurting yourself, or which type exactly? Yes, violence is not only physical, it could be something that is psychological, and self-directed violence, it could be mental, that could escalate to physical. In case you're going through such situation, please do reach out and to professionals or people who can help you. It could escalate if not treated properly. So the latent and manifested levels, latent meaning that is something that is we feel and we feel, but we do not work towards. There is no actual behavior that is done. So attitude is how you approach violence or a conflict. My attitude towards a conflict is something that is subconscious. It is how I speak to the other person. It is how I behave towards the other person. It is how I think of the other person. It's not something that can be seen. It's just something that is felt. But on the other hand, behavioral violence is something. Behavioral conflict is something that you can see. It can be observed. It's conscious. When it says conscious and subconscious, sometimes subconscious is me who is not subconscious. I'm not subconscious of this behavior. But when it comes to manifested violence or manifested left, I'm conscious of this behavior. I'm consciously being rude toward this person. I am consciously stereotyping this person. A lot of situations is that people are not able to recognize that they are not able to recognize that they are doing these let's say these behaviors. They're not consciously subjecting other people to stereotypes. They're not consciously mistreating people. It's just something that was done before them, done in front of them, and done in front of them. So they just behave this way. This is the way they were taught, and this is the way that they learn. Um, Regarding the computer issue and the registration and signing in, the problem has been solved. You can log in from multiple devices. So I hope that answers the question regarding behavioral or latent and manifested level. The last point is the contradiction. Contradiction means that there are root causes of the problem, and there are things that we focus on. So the root cause of my issue, the issue between person X and person Y, is a cultural difference. These two people or person X does not like person Y because of their culture, because of their religion, or because of their nationality. But they would disagree on things like the way you're dressed is not proper, or the way you speak is not clear enough, the way that you behave is not good enough for me. But the root cause of this is just a dislike of this nationality. And I believe that this dislike in every situation is simply lack of communication, misunderstandings, and people need to empathize with each other to understand each other's situation, to understand where these people come from and where these people come from, and why certain people behave in certain ways. Just because they're different doesn't mean that they're bad. It's just that they're different. That's the thing. We're all different. So I will be sharing the results of the last poll. Is there a difference between the disagreement and the conflict? Yes, there are, as you can see. Disagreement is just having two opinions that are different and not agreeing on a common ground. A conflict is something that is more deep-rooted and more deep-rooted and more has heavier meaning. So disagreement can be about anything, but when you have a conflict, it's a bit more serious. Is conflict always violence? No, it is not. It's not always violence. In fact, it could be something that is constructive instead of destructive if managed properly. So this is regarding the point. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but it is the presence of creative alternatives to respond to conflict. Conflict is something that is inevitable. We will always be in conflict, whether it's within ourselves or with other people or with other communities, other religions. There's always going to be conflict. But to use this conflict to understand each other, to find solutions, to work together, this is how you achieve peace. Not to avoid it, it's to utilize whatever is existing to produce. If I keep on ignoring conflict, this conflict is going to escalate, it's going to build up. We're going to have even more deep-rooted issues. But when we approach conflict not as a problem to solve, but as something to be looked deeper into to help us understand the other person, this is when we become peace builders. Although this is all great, but in most situations, conflict has to be solved in a quick manner. It's not always something that could be invested over a long time. There are different conflict transformation or conflict management techniques. So, what exactly is conflict transformation? The conflict transformation transforms deep-rooted armed conflicts into peaceful ones. So you're taking whatever is bad and you're focusing on the issues, the problems, the main problems. You're extracting these, finding solutions for these using peaceful means. So instead of person X and person Y arguing over the clothes, arguing over attitudes, and arguing over things such as behavior, we can take advantage of this misunderstanding of culture that is the deep root of this issue, we can sit down, bring these people together. We can sit down and we can understand each other's cultures, understand the reasons behind our behaviors, the reasons behind our identity, the reasons behind our approach towards and our beliefs. And it's not just to hear because you want to mock the other person. It's because you want to be curious. You want to learn from this other person. These differences are a chance to learn from each other. Another approach is conflict management. Conflict management relies more on diplomatic approaches, and we're going to talk about some conflict management skills. Conflict management could be a long-term or a short-term solution, but it usually uses the technique of negotiation. There are other techniques to approach conflict management. We'll be talking about this shortly. And then we have the conflict resolution school, which is solving the underlying causes of these issues. So there's an issue, and we understood that this reason is the underlying issue, whether religion is the underlying issue, let's say. And we use this the technique, the conflict resolution technique, to bring together people from different religions where they can express, they can talk about their religions, they can learn from each other, they can find solutions that would suit everybody. Conflict resolution aims towards making everybody happy and everybody satisfied with the final solution. Finally, there's the complementary school, which brings together multiple conflict transformation skills and utilizes them. So I'll be using conflict transformation and conflict resolution. I will be getting the deep-rooted issue, and I'll be resolving that. Or I'll be managing the situation using the conflict management school with negotiation, but in the future, over the long term, my negotiation terms will result in a solution or a resolution. So the conflict management school is an interesting school which has 5 different categories. These categories vary from assertiveness and non-assertiveness, assertive and unassertive decisions, and whether the people are whether they depend on cooperation and uncooperation. Assertive meaning that it's being forced on them by management, let's say, by a party who is responsible for these people. Cooperative is they're working together. So competing is a person with authority can force his or her opinion and on the employees and end up with a win-lose situation. So these two employees are fighting. And their manager would tell them, this is my opinion, this is what's going to happen, you're both going to work together towards objective C. This is competing. Avoiding is when is an unassertive, something that is optional, and an uncooperative solution where people are completely uninteracting. They are trying to avoid discussion that would allow the person to state their opinion. They could avoiding is usually good when people are emotionally charged. Everybody's angry, so it's better to separate these people, take a break, calm down, and then bring these people back to discuss it in a more peaceful way. So sometimes when we're angry, we do not think of what we're saying, and avoiding is a good situation of or a good skill or technique to use when people are not 100% in control of what's going to happen. Collaboration is it's actually one of the best. It's a good cooperative method, which is sometimes you're forced to work with someone else, so you're collaborating with them, but you are being cooperative with them. So the result is suits both people, but you are kind of forced into this situation. Accommodating is a very interesting technique, which is unassertive. You are doing this by choice, and you are trying to become as cooperative as positive as possible. So you accommodate to the needs of the other party. So let's say I have my need is to build this building, and person Y's need is to build 3 buildings. Person Y has more buildings, and they don't need to build all 3 buildings. So they'll give this chance to the other person. I'm giving the other person a chance because I am not that in much of need when it comes to my situation. Compromising is the middle ground technically and technically, which is I'm gonna give something, you're gonna give something. We're both going to lose something, and we're both going to find the final result by giving a piece of what we need away to reach the goals that we both want. So the other school is conflict resolution school, and this is one of the most important peace building tools. They're all equally important, but and they're all used in different situations. But my personal favorite is conflict resolution. Conflict resolution has 3 types, which is negotiation, arbitration, and mediation. Negotiation is when 2 parties discuss what each party needs and how they can accommodate for each other. So I'm going to give away this service, but I need from you this product. And it is always facilitated by a third party. Sorry, it could go on without a third party. Whereas arbitration, on the other hand, requires a neutral third party when there is a conflict present. It requires a neutral third party with authority. So an arbitrator could be a judge, it could be someone with power, it could be a manager, etc. The arbitrator must listen to both parties, and based on their reasoning and based on their arguments, the arbitrator will come up with the final solution or a final solution that both can follow. The last type of conflict resolution approach is mediation. Mediation is a mediator is a very important person and plays a crucial role when it comes to conflict resolution. A mediator is a completely neutral party that does not inflict their opinion or does not force people in conflict towards a solution. A mediator would listen to both sides. A mediator would point out certain topics to focus on. So in case of the 2 neighbors with different cultures, when a mediator is involved, the mediator would say, see, I know that this person criticizes, this person does not like the way you dress, or you do not like the way this person dresses. Is it possible that it is not the way that he dresses, but the way, but your understanding of his culture, your understanding of his nationality? So a mediator would point out certain points that were not taken into consideration by parties, and they would help both parties reach the resolutions or the final conclusions themselves. The mediator would not force their opinion. So a mediator, as I said, is a very important person, and they must have certain attributes. Mediator must have big ears for listening. They need to be patient, and they need to listen to each parties and not interrupt, and be respectful and understand where this person comes from. A mediator needs to have clear eyes for seeing. They must not only rely on word of mouth, they must see the situation themselves and be the judge of the situations themselves. And by judge, I do not mean they would inflict this opinion. It's just for them based on, to give an opinion if asked. So me as a mediator, I would have to see, the conflict is actual culture or might have cultural underlying tones. So I might want to advise these people towards talking about culture. They must have a small mouth to focus on listening rather than talking. So a mediator is a person who would listen and would minimize amount of input that they have as much as they can, because in the end, a mediator wants to ease the process and wants these people to reach this conclusion on their own, with their own with their own observations, with their own conclusions. Something that they've reached this point because they are convinced, rather than someone convinced them or someone forced them to think in this way. A mediator needs to have a big heart. They have to be empathetic and compassionate, and they need to put themselves in other people's shoes. They have to understand where these people are coming from, and they have to show emotion and compassion. They must have their ego contained. Just because a mediator may know better, a mediator should not always force their opinions or force their perspectives on other people. A mediator must have their big feet firmly on the ground, meaning that they must stand with their principles. They must stick to the way they believe and their core values, because that's the reason they were chosen as a mediator, because of their principles and their core values. They know that discrimination based on culture is wrong, so they cannot let people convince them that it is okay. So what are the principles of a mediator? Principles of a mediator must be self-determined, meaning that they have the ability and the right to define their issues, needs, and solutions, and to determine the outcome of the process without advice suggestion. They can understand that although they are requested as a mediator, their opinion is not always, or their beliefs are not always. Okay, let me put this in another way. A mediator has to be self-determined, meaning that they need to understand that the parties involved are aware and consenting enough to reach these solutions and the resolutions on their own without influence. These are people who are adults and they are consenting and they are aware. So they do not need a person to influence other opinions on them. They need someone to listen to them and help them cooperate. They need to be confidential. Whatever is said during a mediation session is extremely confidential, especially if it was one-on-one. I cannot, as a mediator, take this input from person X and go to person Y. Or person X says that you have issues with playing music all night. This is why I dislike you. No, these are confidential information. Information shared confidentially may not be the actual reason, but it is a way to vent out for people in conflict. It has to be a voluntary process. A mediator cannot be forced towards being involved in mediation. It should be something that they volunteer for because they want to help other people, not because they are forced to do it by external parties. A mediator has to have informed consent has to give informed consent about the process of the mediation, what's going to happen. We're going to go through steps A, B, C. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about that. If you do not consent to this, we cannot proceed with the process. A mediator needs to be an extremely neutral party. If they feel that they lean towards a certain individual or a certain idea, or that they are biased, they need to extract themselves. A mediator needs to come in with a completely neutral idea. They may believe these things internally, but they must never act on these biases, or they must not advise people based on these biases. So you need to be a neutral and impartial party. And one of the last skills one of the last tools we will be discussing today, which is dialogue, will be finishing up in 10 minutes, and then we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. I'm trying to answer the questions as much as I can. There's a question that says, can contradiction not lead to violence? For example, peaceful demonstration, contradicting attitudes, behavior, but without the use of violence. So, violence is an extreme case of conflict. When we say contradiction, meaning that I understood your question, behave properly. My attitude is that I am or I am not, I'm subconsciously, let's say, discriminant or something like that. But my behavior is peaceful and normal. It is, it's behavior one way or another when your feelings and your thoughts are deep rooted. It may sway your behaviors whether you realize it or not. And my advice when it comes to that is to look into these attitudes further and to see the reasons behind why am I discriminant? Why am I having these attitudes? Is it because of this? But it's not a logical thing to be discriminant against this group of people or this community because of the way they dress. Or I'm trying to give non-offensive or non-offensive topics, so please bear with my examples. I'm trying to be as accommodating as I can and respectful of all cultures. I'm trying to use myself as an example, but please note that I am not, I do not feel this is the way that I am expressing because I don't want to use any person as an example. So I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, so attitudes and behaviors, the subconscious will bleed into the conscious whether we like it or not. So the best way to approach it is understand the underlying reason, understand the underlying or the deep-rooted causes behind these attitudes. So can anyone be a mediator, or does it have to be someone in a leadership position? No, anyone can be a mediator as long as they are skilled enough and they have these kind of qualifications and principles enough. You don't need to be a leader to be a mediator. A mediator could be a parent between siblings arguing. A mediator could be a colleague or a friend or a sibling, or it could be anyone. But on a, I'm just giving examples of large scale. But anyone could be a mediator as long as they have these principles and they have these attributes of a mediator. Okay, so let's move into dialogue so I don't hog the time. Dialogue is a very beautiful approach to conversation. When you are in dialogue, you are seeking mutual understanding and mutual accommodation. When you are having a conversation and you're using the approach of dialogue, or when you're having a dialogue, your focus is not to point out what's wrong and what the other person is saying. No, your focus is to find the beauty and the reasoning, to understand the perspective of the other person. Coming from different cultures and coming from a country with a great diversity, dialogue is very important because dialogue, having dialogue with people, with individuals from different nationalities is important because with difference in cultures, it could be difficult to differentiate or to approach certain conversations, but make sure that you approach them with mutual understanding and respect. There are rules to dialogue, and I will be talking about them right now. It is in dialogue you do not assume. You always listen and you pay attention and you hear. In dialogue, you express your personal response. You don't say person X said no. You say what I think and what I feel. It's not, you're not here to use hearsay. You're here to talk about your opinion in the most respectful way. You listen and you speak without judgment. I'm here to listen to you without judging you or your background or your beliefs. Who am I to judge? I'm here to listen to you while talk, and I'm here to talk to you with the same amount of respect that I would expect anyone to talk to me. In dialogue, there is no status. We're all equal. there's no such thing as a manager or a director. In dialogue, we're here to learn from each other. In dialogue, we honor confidentiality. Whatever is said during the dialogue stays between us. I'm not gonna go and take whatever you said and use it against you outside of our personal space or outside of our confidential space or our safe space. We listen to understand, not to judge. We ask for clarification or use open-minded questions. When we ask, we want to learn more and we want to understand more, not to judge. Do not use attitudes or judgmental attitudes when you're in dialogue. We honor silence and time for reflection. We talk a lot, and when you get excited in a conversation or in a dialogue, and you express and you open up, but we need to honor silence, and we need to take a moment to absorb all this information that we gave away and the information that we took. We need to reflect. We need to see how this information changes our opinion, how this information will affect us and affect our views. We speak one person at a time. We do not interrupt each other. We listen to the person until they're done and until they feel like their point has been delivered in the best way possible. These are the rules of dialogue. There are two types of dialogue. There's the participatory dialogue, where it is a process in a safe space, and you engage with the community. So we're a group of people, or we're two or more people. We're participating, we're listening, and we're hearing, and we understand from each other. We're talking, etc. Reflective participatory dialogue, which is a much more elevated, I would say, approach to participatory dialogue, which is not only dialogue to express and understand, but dialogue to reflect and to absorb and see what could be taken in and what could be left. Participatory reflective dialogue leads to tolerance and understanding and the coexistence of a diverse world. Finally, I would conclude with the. I'd like to conclude with the United Nations Council resolution, and I would like to conclude with the United Nations Security Council resolution, which discusses youth, peace, and security. This resolution was drafted by the youth and proposed to the United Nations Security Council to ensure the safety and security of youth around youth that belong to the countries involved in the UNSCR. The purpose of this is to educate. It's to enable and empower youth, and it pushes youth towards actively engaging in shaping the peace and the justice of the community. It talks about how unique the demographic of the youth demographic and how we should make them inclusive when it comes to policies and decision making, and how today's youth is the largest worldwide. The amount of youth we have right now is the largest worldwide, and how we can involve youth and how we can protect youth. So we'll be moving on to the 5 principles of the UNSCR, which is participation, how to consider ways to increase inclusive representation of youth. How can we let youth participate when it comes to decision making, to leadership roles, to peace agreements. The UNSCR encourages youth, or like governments, to involve youth when it comes to decision making. It talks about protection, which is the protection of youth from all types of violence. Alhamdulillah, in the UAE, we have the support of our government when it comes to the empowerment of youth, and youth in the UAE are appreciated and protected and heard and and taken into consideration when it comes to decision making, when it comes to implementing peace building or peace agreements. And we have partnerships, which is the third concept or the third topic of the 2250 resolution, which talks about increasing the support of the youth by funding them, by providing platforms, giving them the voice to be heard. And the fourth one is prevention, which is the facilitating and enabling an environment where youth can be recognized. Here in the UAE, we have different platforms and different entities that you can go to, and that they can support the youth when it comes to ideas, initiatives, projects, anything that can contribute towards the economy. To promote a culture of peace, tolerance, and intercultural, interreligious dialogue is one of the conditions of the prevention concept in the UNSCR resolution. Finally, disengagement and reintegration. Activities must consider the needs of the youth. So whenever an agreement whenever a agreement or a policy is released or is drafted, the UNSCR 2020-50 resolution focuses on how this agreement or how this decision will affect the youth. It also talks about investment in building young persons' capabilities and skills through education, workshop, enablement, through experience, opportunities, etc. So, spoken about the entities. Before we move on to that, I would like to share with you a great picture of that family that I showed you and that I started with. As you can see, we're all young, bright people, and we all are working towards a peaceful and a integrated community. I'd like to thank you all for attending. And before I conclude, I would like to give the platform to the Youth Council President, Salam Al-Flasi. She is one of the people that I was discussing when it comes to the organizations or entities that are contributing towards the empowerment of youth. Salama, if you can unmute your mic.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mariam, for this great session and for the great words that you said about Youth Council. We're really proud of you. I would like to take the chance to greet everyone, especially in the special day that is the International Youth Day. So I hope that you have a very lovely day today. As you mentioned through the lecture, we as a young leader were really honored and proud that we're lately being recognized as in different communities and countries in taking part in leading initiatives and reshaping the political processes. In Dubai Police, I would like to have the opportunity and to thank His Excellency Lieutenant General Abdullah Khalif Al-Marri, the Commander-in-Chief of Dubai Police, in giving us the full support in enabling the engagement of youth through the strategic project, through the initiatives that were being held. And recently, Mariam is being involved in such a strategic project, and she'll be taking part in reshaping the new strategies of Dubai Police on the upcoming 10 years. I would like to mention also one of the proudest moments that we had been done as young leaders in Dubai Police. We have organized a program, the first of its kind. We gathered young global police leaders all around the world to discuss and tackle challenges about the future challenges, about the cooperation and how to lead such a police organization. Thank you again, Mariam, for such a great opportunity to be part of this lecture.
Salama for the beautiful words. And like you said, Salama, the support of the leadership here in Dubai Police can all be attributed to our leader, the leader of the Dubai Police, the leader of Dubai Police and the Commander-in-Chief of Dubai Police, Abdullah Khalifa Al-Murri. I am personally proud and thankful and grateful for all the opportunities and the personal motivation I've received. His Excellency is a person who is always involved when it comes to the improvement and empowerment of youth. This is a very proud picture of mine. It's one of my favorite pictures, and I wanted to share it with you as a conclusion. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you for your attention, and I will be moving on to the question and answer part. So if you want to ask a question live, you can raise your hand, and I'll be taking questions. Until then, I'll be reading from the question and answer option. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask about the workshop, please go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, so I will be reading some questions right now. Have a question. What is the biggest and quickest way to check our own biases, make sure we're being objective before trying to resolve a solution? Thank you for asking this question. So I think, in my personal opinion, nothing that has a long-term impact can be done quickly. The safest thing or the first thing that you can do is whenever you're approaching a situation and whenever you're trying to resolve an issue, what you can do is that you can take a moment, ask yourself, if this person was not from, or like depending on the biases that you would usually have, if this person was not from this community, not from this religion, not from this gender, would I still have the same opinion of them? Would I still approach the same way I would have approached in any other situation? So you need to look at it from a perspective of whether I'm going to approach the situation the same way from one person to the other, or am I just going to approach it in this way because of this person? So I hope that answered the question. Why do people think that if we disagree with them, that suddenly we do not respect them? Or if we respect their opinion, we have to agree with them? This is actually a very interesting question. Unfortunately, this could be, unfortunately, this does happen. Why do people think that if we disagree with them, it means that we do not respect them? It could be due to issues such as not clear communication, or these people have this ingrained thought or this ingrained belief that if person A thinks in this way, then they just don't. They're not right. They are. They don't like me. They are targeting me. They have something against me, and they're being disrespectful. But no, I think us as peace builders or as individuals, what we can do is approach the situation from another perspective. This is my opinion, and this is what I think, and you can clarify. I respect you, but I would like to disagree with you, or I would like to point out another perspective. I think using proper keywords when having a certain discussion is important, because this way you are not leaving room for misunderstanding. And even if there was a misunderstanding, we need to look at it in a calm manner, and we need to approach it in a very respectful manner. Perhaps this person just has a certain belief ingrained into them, that a certain or like a way of thought equals disagreement, or a way of thought equals disrespect. So I hope that answered the question. For a conflict to turn into a major worldwide problem. Yes, it can. A conflict can turn into a major worldwide problem. A lot of conflicts have in the past. If a conflict is not managed or addressed properly, it can continue to escalate. I'll give you an example. A family of people, or like a family, kids and their the parents, the parent, these kids are having problems with the parents. This conflict can escalate. This conflict may I don't think that was a good example, but if the parties involved are political or they are very, very influential, it could lead into a major worldwide problem. It could be something that is the issue behind these disagreements are cultural, which could lead to a community disagreement, and then people coming from a different country, let's say community A comes from country A and community B comes from country B. These two communities are in conflict within a certain country. The conflict becomes so extreme that it translates to their own countries. So this is the way that a conflict can escalate so extremely that it becomes a major worldwide problem. Okay. Is a negotiator and a mediator same in their study? Is it important to be very patient? A negotiator and a mediator are not the same thing. A negotiator tries to find a middle ground for people while finding things that can be given and finding things that can, during a negotiation, I will give something away and the other person will give something away. Or I would want this and the other person would want this. Negotiator would facilitate these things and give advice accordingly. But a mediator would try to solve a solution. So instead of taking and giving, they will try to find a final and a peaceful solution towards the conflict. Please do not be shy and participate during the voice. The audio participation. It would be great to hear your questions directly and to understand them properly. So sometimes I'm reading them, but they may not be clear 100% to me. There are certain people who think negatively and do not try to understand other people's perspectives. How do we deal with them? So negative thoughts come from misunderstanding, miscommunication, and not clear perspectives of the differences. What can be done is that you can try to talk to the person and try to show them that 1, 2, 3 is the actual reality. Please try to understand. This is where I come from, as in this is where my opinions originate from. If a situation is too severe and cannot be handled between the people themselves, you usually seek the help of a mediator or an external neutral party that would assist you in finding a solution. Okay. I think we're done. Yeah, I don't want to take up so much from your time. Any unanswered questions, I will be answering them by email. You can still send me an email with questions. That's fine. If no one wants to join with the voice participation, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for your time. I hope it was a beneficial workshop, and I hope it was an interesting workshop. And the thing that I hope for the most is that it piqued your interest in the concept of peace and peace building, and that you would read into it more, understand it more, and see how you can implement it in your day-to-day life. Thank you all for your attendance. I wish you a good evening or good morning from wherever you are currently located in. Okay, so someone raised their hand. I don't know if we'll take one question. Hello?
Hello, madam.
Yes, hi.
Hello, okay. Ma'am, I need to know if someone is not living happily, how do we motivate them? Like, what should we tell them?
So regarding living happily, it's not my area of expertise, so I cannot give you with good conscience and any good advice. But I think you should maybe seek someone to help you out in this situation. Unfortunately, when it comes to these kind of topics, they would require a professional. So, but thank you for the question. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. Have a good evening and goodbye.